A quiet cul-de-sac. A porch light left on like a prayer. 2 plates stacked in a kitchen, still wet from dinner, because the living believe tomorrow will come. What we weren't told is that sometimes the darkness wears a badge by day. The stranger moved like a rumor. Doors found unlocked that shouldn't be, windows cracked open a finger's width, dogs unsettled for reasons their owners couldn't name. Phone lines cut. Then the whisper, "Don't move." He was methodical. He was patient. He was someone you might have waved to at the grocery store. They would call him many names across many years. Visalia ransacker, East Area rapist, original Night Stalker. History would fold them into one. The Golden State Killer. His real name? Joseph James DeAngelo, a former California police officer. Before the headlines, he wore a uniform. Exeter, Auburn, a cop, trained, calm, fluent in the way investigations move. The kind of man who knew which streets were patrolled and when, how evidence is gathered, how fear travels through a neighborhood like static. He knew the anatomy of a crime scene. He knew how to leave one behind. This is where the mask matters. By day, the face of order. By night, a student of chaos. And if you're wondering how he slipped past so many doors, so many detectives, so many years, start there. He started small, prowling, break-ins, the unnerving sense that someone had been inside your life while you were away. Stolen mementos, slashed screens, rearranged rooms. Then he escalated. He stalked neighborhoods first, mapping escape routes, watching couples, learning routines. He cut the phones. He bound victims, often with shoelaces. If there was a male partner, he'd threaten him, sometimes stacking dishes on his back. If I hear a single plate fall, the cruelty was not chaos. It was choreography. From Sacramento's suburbs in the mid-70s, the East Area rapist, to Southern California at the turn of the 80s, the original Night Stalker. The violence spread. By the count later admitted in court, dozens of rapes and 13 murders. More than 100 burglaries. A state's worth of fear. We're not going to linger on the terror for spectacle. We'll honor the truth without feeding the darkness. Our producer knows one of the survivors personally. We won't share names. We won't retell their private pain. But hear this. The evil here wasn't abstract. It wasn't a headline. It had hands, habits, and a face you could pass in daylight. That's how deep the wound goes. Why wasn't he stopped sooner? Because his crimes crossed jurisdictions. Sacramento, Contra Costa, Santa Barbara, Orange, Ventura. Because in those years, many agencies didn't share data easily. Patterns were harder to stitch together. Because DNA testing was still a distant idea. Because he thought like an investigator and moved like a ghost. He parked away from scenes. He studied fences, canals, easements, the backstage of suburbia. He weaponized the way we live. And so the myth grew, the night visitor who never left footprints. But myths don't end cases. Science does. Decades pass. Families wait. Evidence sleeps in cold storage. Then a new kind of key, genetic genealogy. Investigators upload crime scene DNA to an open database used by hobbyists building family trees. A distant match surfaces, then another, branches pointing back toward one name. Surveillance teams collect a discarded sample, something he touched and threw away. The lab runs it. Match. April 2018. A Sacramento suburb. Joseph James DeAngelo is taken into custody without a fight. The mask is finally off. In 2020, at 74, he pled guilty to 13 murders and 13 kidnappings tied to rapes, and he admitted responsibility for dozens more attacks. The room was full of voices that had been quiet too long, survivors and families speaking power into the silence he created. Their words were the architecture of justice, brick by careful brick. The sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. Not one life term, many, stacked like the nights he stole. Where is Joseph DeAngelo today? He is incarcerated in California, serving those multiple life sentences. He will never be released. We count cases, we list dates, but what was taken can't be tallied. Whole futures, detoured, rooms that still feel colder than they should, locks that never fully quiet the mind, families who became experts in a darkness they never asked to study. If you want to understand the depth of his evil, don't look at the numbers. Look at the lives that had to learn how to keep going. You'll hear 3 titles in this story, and each hides a truth. Visalia Ransacker, a wave of ransackings and a devastating murder in the mid-70s, widely believed to be his earliest phase. East Area Rapist, Sacramento's stalker of suburbia, a terror that moved like fog between neighborhoods. Original Night Stalker, Southern California's killer whose crimes for decades were not connected to the rapes up north. Different names. One man. A fractured mirror finally pieced together. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity. Connection saves cases. When jurisdictions share data, patterns emerge. Science evolves. Evidence that sleeps today may speak tomorrow. Communities matter. Neighborhood watchfulness, reporting prowling or small break-ins. These things thread the needle earlier. Survivors lead. When we listen, when we believe, when we support, justice finds oxygen. We don't study monsters to admire them. We study patterns so fewer lives get drawn into their orbit. What do you call a man who wears a badge by day and breaks lives by night? A contradiction? A coward? A predator with a time card? Maybe the word doesn't matter. The sentence does. And the truth is this: the shadows he built are where we now bring light. You've been listening to What We Weren't Told. We are a tribe. We don't settle for the headline. We walk into the shadows together and name what lives there. If this story gripped you, if it honored the courage of survivors, subscribe, and share. It motivates us to keep creating and to keep bringing you more of what we weren't told. Next time, we leave the cul-de-sac and step into a different kind of trap. Not a serial predator, but a family fortune worth killing for. Inheritance games, marriages, murders, and the price of a last name.